Hey guys, so today we're talking about a topic that seems to be debated in quite a few circles, and that's should you caulk around your toilet or should you not? Now, the reason I think this probably gets debated more than it actually should is because there's no hard line as to what is right and what's wrong. Some local code will say you need to caulk it, some won't say anything at all, and some will say you don't need to do it. So it really varies a lot by, again, depending on where you're at. So if you're thinking about this, definitely check your local code. If you're installing a toilet, again, check your local code and see what it says. If it says nothing, just do whatever you feel like is the right option. So in this video, I'll go over a couple reasons for caulking the toilet, a couple reasons against it, and then I'll show you what I do. Now, the first reason would be that adding caulk down here just adds some stability. You've got, when you install the toilet, of course, you've got the bolts here and you tighten that down pretty good. But after a while, it will loosen up sometimes and you get some wiggle. Or if you have an uneven floor, it just helps to add some stability down here so they won't move around. And if you've ever actually had to pull out a toilet that's been caulked down, you know it's pretty difficult and requires quite a bit. Now, another reason to caulk around the toilet would be this edge down here. And this is a curved edge. So what happens is when water or anything else goes down here, it's going to redirect it back to the center towards the flange. So any kind of moisture or water that goes down this will actually go sit underneath the toilet, and you won't be able to just get it with a rag or with a mop or whatever. You'll actually have to dig down in there to try and get that out, and you won't get a lot of it out. So what happens is the moisture builds up and you get bacteria and you get mold and you get other stuff down there, and eventually it starts to stink a little bit. So that would be a good reason to actually caulk around the toilet. It's just to stop that buildup of moisture and mold and bacteria. Now, one of the arguments against actually caulking the toilet is that if you have a leak in the flange and this is caulked, you won't necessarily see the leak because you won't have water leaking out the sides or the front or anything like that. So you won't know it, and what will end up happening is that it goes underneath the floor and could potentially damage the floor, or if you're on the second floor or something, it could damage the ceiling. I don't think this is that likely, but it is a possibility, of course, if it went that long. Now, another reason against caulking around the toilet might be that you could damage the floor if the toilets were moved improperly. Now, it is possible that if the caulk is not cut, that if you have an older tile, you could crack the tile, or even if maybe you have LVP or something like that, you can pull up a piece of LVP. Again, I don't think that's very likely, and it probably would be a huge fix if it did happen. So I don't really see that as a huge concern, but I would say it is possible. So when it comes down to whether or not you should or shouldn't caulk around your toilet, I would definitely say you should, mainly because I think the concerns that people have is actually alleviated as long as you do it right. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you how to properly caulk around your toilet so that it's nice and clean and there's no mess. All right, so before we get started here, let's talk a little bit about our options. So for the most part, you're either going to have silicone or acrylic latex. Most of the time, silicone is a little bit better for waterproofing, but like I said, they will both work. And usually acrylic is just going to be a little bit cheaper depending on where you buy it, at least what I found. So you really could go either way. I think they'll both hold up. Silicone might be a little bit better in this situation, but like I said, I think both of them will end up working just fine. Now, the other thing we want to do before we start is clean this up as best as we can. Get as much out of there as you can, then we can go ahead and start caulking it. Now for this, I'm going to be using a caulking gun because that'll open it up and everything. If you don't have that, you can easily buy a tube, a squeeze tube, which is nice too. Costs a little bit more, but if you don't have this, you don't have the gun, it's also nice. Now I want to cut this back far. One side will touch the floor and one side will touch the toilet, so I only have to go over it once. So like I said, I want to cut it back decent here. Leave myself a decent size opening. I'm just going to slide that, just put that in an angle. Cut that there. That gives me a angled cut there. Take the end, Now to start here, I'm just going to go to the back here. I'm not going to go around to the back side, just pretty much to the, right about there. I'm just going to fill this in like that. One of these, now I'll put a link to these in the description. There's lots of different options here. You could go with the straight edge and square it off. You could have a little angle on it. Again, different here, you could curve it. I'm going to go with the straight edge here. And we're just going to put it along the side here. I'm just going to pull that. Then I can just take a paper towel or a piece of toilet paper or something like that and wipe this off here. Let's get that kind of wet there. Clean up any excess that's left. Now, another thing to notice is that I am stopping pretty much right here on both sides, not actually caulking the back of this. And that's mainly because, again, if there is a leak underneath there, like we talked before, the water will flow out the back and you will notice the leak.